It was reported in the news.
Okay, so one second. So just one. Let me just come in here. Sai Deepak, look, we can of course have this hanging match between the BJP and the Congress till the cows come home. But I want to ask you a couple of specific questions that I raised. Does being a member, let's say that the Bajrang Dal is not an organization that Sanjay Jha and his party recognize as working within the boundaries of Indian democracy. Let's for a moment recognize and accept the Congress proposition. But does being a member of the Bajrang Dal lessen the gravity of the hate crime against Harsha? And I want to ask you, is violence being used to dismantle Hindutva today?
So if you remember, Rahul, in the last debate on the same hijab controversy, I specifically pointed out that this region is highly radicalized and volatile as a consequence of offshoots of Simi operating from behind the scenes, and even, let's say, they've come to the fore. And what you've seen is the exact apprehension playing itself out. This clearly tells you the manufactured nature of the controversy. But for a moment, let's actually keep the blessed hijab on the side. A Hindu boy, 26-year-old boy, has just died. His mother is wailing, and we are fighting over politics. And let me say this bluntly, this was not a political murder, this was a religiously motivated assassination. There, I've said it. A Hindu was killed for being an assertive Hindu because his heart effectively was on the right side, and the man wanted to assert his Hindu identity and specifically was asking for equal treatment. Harsha was not asking for the exclusive right of saffron shawls or towels to be worn in school and hijab to be banned. In fact, he was asking for a uniform code. So this is the consequence for a Hindu asking for parity in treatment. Second, I have to say this. Condemnation, apparently, in the language of Mr. Jha, starts by expressing condolence and then goes on to say, but you know, CIA effectively called this organization a terrorist organization or a militant organization. Well, therefore, that's how exactly I'll monkey balance this entire condolence by starting with a condolence message and then say, well, he was a member of this particular organization, and then all of us are expected to buy this hogwash. I have to say this aloud. The fact of the matter is systematic dehumanization of Hindus who are assertive Hindus and therefore members of any party or organization that represents this particular ideology is the reason that this particular boy was murdered in broad daylight. And you have so-called editors such as Shekhar Gupta specifically highlighting murder in single quotes as if questioning the fact that this was a murder. So this is the nature of the creature or the devil that you're dealing with. I refuse to buy that all of this is political. This is fundamentally religious. And therefore, please, let's accept this. Let's at least accept the realities and facts for what they are. You are looking at the third wave of radicalization, and that is the fact of the matter. Those organizations responsible for this must be banned. People have been asking for the banning of the PFI from across the board, from Kerala to Karnataka and other places. How many more murders does the government at the state level and the union level need before they start acting on these urges, on these exhortations? I can't say this enough. We can keep playing these political games, but people who are assertive Hindus are being silenced systematically. It's not just the foot soldier, but people who also represent that particular ideology who are at serious risk. A couple of months ago, we had this news of the RSS headquarters being the subject of some kind of an attack. There were terror threats being issued. This is the nature of the creature. Why do we call this a political murder? This was not a political murder. This was religious. Can anybody say that the hijab controversy is merely political? It is religious. What did he do? Please tell me something. If somebody is a member of the VHP or the BJP or the RSS or let's say the Bajrang Dal, what crime have they committed? If somebody can be a member of the AIMIM, which effectively represents the party of the Razakars, I say this, why can't anybody be a member of the BJP, RSS or any other organization that represents Hindutva? I just don't understand. So I'm sorry to say, I refuse to buy this hogwash. Anybody who minces words in expressing condemnation for this particular broad daylight religious murder is a hypocrite of the first order and is fundamentally an anti-Hindu regardless of his religious affiliation. Whether he's a Hindu or a Muslim doesn't matter. He has become a Hindu hater unconsciously and subconsciously. That is a fact. And I have to say this once more. if the state continues to turn a blind eye to these kind of broad daylight murders, then there will come a point where the community that has just suffered another murder will have to look for options outside the state to protect itself, because the state comes in only after everything is done, and the legal system is not proving to be a sufficient deterrent.
Okay. Dr. Anand Ranganathan, what do you make of this latest instance of bigotry, unrestrained, unequivocal bigotry?
Yes, good evening, Rahul. It is indeed a terribly sad day. You know, Harsha is yet another Hindu name lost in the midst of victimhood and propaganda. But before Harsha, there was Kishan. Before Kishan, there was Kamlesh. And before Kamlesh, there were thousands whose names don't even register in our minds because they have been clouded with selectivity. And because all these people have worked for Hindu causes, they have systematically been dehumanized. So if they are RSS workers or VHP workers or Bajrang Dal workers, their lives don't count at all. Their deaths are explained away, that this was a natural cause going to happen anyway. And so we maintain silence on more than 190 Muslim mob hate attacks on Hindus, Dalits and non-Dalits over the past 2.5 years, Rahul, including Bharat Yadav, who was lynched after being called a kafir, including in Ranchi, where a Muslim mob segregated bus passengers based on their religion before wanting to set it on fire, including Dalit Gangaram, who was lynched because he dared to file a police complaint when his daughter was abducted, including breaking Ambedkar statue, thrashing Dalit families after they objected to a Dalit girl, Sarita, being assaulted by a Muslim, including nearly lynching a Dalit Jayanti Bhatti for daring to wear a Pathan suit, including going on a murderous rampage in Bangalore over alleged blasphemy by Dalit Nitin. That particular instance, you may recall, Rahul, took a backseat to the propaganda of Muslims joining hands and forming a ring around a Hindu temple to save it miraculously. None of these attacks elicit any outrage. I'll tell you something else that hasn't elicited any outrage. The statement recently by Karnataka Congress leader Mukarram Khan, who said, and I quote him, "Those who stop Muslim girls from wearing hijab will be chopped to pieces," unquote. And a few days later, Harsha is indeed chopped to pieces, and he did no such thing as stopping anyone from wearing a hijab. His crime was to ask for a uniform dress code. Rahul, you have to understand, secularism cannot win over Sharia. It stands no chance. This is an argument any one of us cannot win, because we are man, not God. And God or Allah has specifically prescribed a dress code, 2431, 3359. God or Allah has specifically ordered that those who abuse Allah and His Messenger, Allah has cursed them in this world and the hereafter and prepared for them a humiliating punishment, 3357. And that the penalty for those who wage war against Allah is that they be killed or crucified, 533. We need to understand, anyone who is perceived to have abused Allah or His Messenger or prevented His order from being followed will sooner or later meet the fate of Kamlesh Tiwari or Samuel Pati or Kishan or Harsha. It may take a week, a month, a year, a decade, but it will happen, Rahul. The second thing quickly we need to understand, just 20 seconds, is that it is the moderate Muslim who perennially plays the victim card and cushions the extremists. They snare the fundamentalists but spare the fundamentals. The irony is that they want non-believers against whom so much violence has been ordered to feel good about it and not be fearful. Isn't that nice? The holy book, Rahul, grabs the neck of the believer and of the non-believer severs it.
Well, strong words there by Dr. Ranganathan.
Ever heard a such a preposterous logic and argument from anywhere in recent times?
Yes, I have from Mr. Kamruzaman's leader, Rahul Gandhi, but that's besides the point. Good evening, Navika, and good evening to all my fellow panelists. I've been listening very patiently. I hope I would not be interrupted. There are two issues here, and I don't want to digress from the debate at all because it's a very important issue. It's a very serious issue. Number one, when it suits the propagandists and selectivists, they praise and believe the judiciary or the police under the BJP. When it doesn't, the same police become fascists and murderers, and the same judiciary compromise and BJP stooges. So right now, they are saying they believe the Karnataka police because the police has not come out and said categorically that Harsha's murder is linked to hijab or is a hate crime. So they won't believe the parents in this case. They will believe the fascist police under the BJP. Like, remember how they believed the fascist Delhi police when it said that the missing Najib from JNU had not joined ISIS. But when it didn't suit them, they believed the parents. Like in the case of Navreet Singh, whose tractor slammed into a police barricade on Republic Day last year and he died. But these propagandists said that fascist Delhi police had shot him. Remember the Lakhimpur incident, Navika, when the jeep mowed down the protesters? There, these same propagandists suddenly believed the fascist UP police and the SIT of it, because it said it was a pre-planned conspiracy and not an accident. Remember the lynching of Rinku Sharma last year, where the police said there was no communal ankle, but Rinku's parents insisted it was otherwise? And the strange thing was, those who had barely 2 weeks earlier believed the parents over the police on the death of Navreet Singh, now believe the police over the parents. In Navreet's case, the police was communal. In Rinku's case, it was secular. I wonder what it would be called in this case in a week's time, when the investigation is complete. Likewise for the judiciary. When Justice Devani overturned Maya Kodnani's trial court conviction and acquitted her, they called him a BJP stooge and a villain. But when the same judge overturned the trial court acquittal of 3 Hindus in the Viramgram riots case and convicted them, they called him a hero. Point number 2, very briefly, Navika. If this is indeed a case of punishment for blasphemy, and it appears to be so, given that a fatwa against Harsha was proclaimed 7 years ago for his alleged comment against Allah and Prophet Muhammad, then I'm afraid the writing was on the wall. Nothing could have been done. Harsha was a dead man walking. Just like Kishan, just like Kamlesh Tiwari, because Allah has specifically ordered that those who abuse Allah and His Messenger, Allah has cursed them in this world and the hereafter and prepared for them a humiliating punishment, 3357, and that the penalty for those who wage war against Allah and His Messenger is that they be killed or crucified 533. We have seen it all before, Navika.
Please.
From Rajpal, who published Rangila Rasool,
you cannot
to
speak
Kamlesh
about
Tiwari,
any religion
whose deaths
on
were
national
demanded by
television.
millions.
I want to ask Saida Falak. 1 minute, Kamruzaman Chaudhry Saab. 1 minute. You have all the freedoms of choice, of expression, of speaking on anything, but Dr. Anand Ranganathan does
what
not.
What hateful ideology killed Kamlesh Tiwari? Ask Kamruzaman. अगर हिम्मत है तो बता दो कमरुज़मान.
No, what ideology killed Pehlukam? What ideology killed Tabriz Ansari?
Now, he
Can you please tell me?
Just 5 seconds ago, he was
What
saying
about me? You are doing whataboutery. You
now
don't
he
have
is
any
indulging in
logic.
whataboutery. I asked him.
More Muslims.
Navika,
As
you
a
have to
Congress
mute him
man, I
because,
will not want to abuse any other religion.
1 minute. I want to get in Vivek Srivastava. 1 minute, Kamruzaman Chaudhry. I'm sorry, I haven't invited you alone to the debate. There are other people who need to get a word in, and Vivek Srivastava.
It took 5 seconds. Please, I want to ask him a simple question.
Okay.
He was talking about Navika, we are prisoners of hateful ideology that killed Harsha. I want to ask him, Mr. Kamruzaman, what hateful ideology killed Kamlesh Tiwari? What hateful ideology beheaded him? And don't talk of what about him.
All right, respond, Kamruzaman Chaudhry, to the pointed question asked by Anand Ranganathan.
Drive here.
Who killed, which ideology killed Kamlesh Tiwari?
That is the exact point that I want this debate to proceed. Navika, the basic point that I wanted to discuss here in your debate today was exactly this, the question that Anandji has asked just now. What ideology killed Kamlesh Tiwari? The same hate ideology that killed Tabriz Ansari. The same hate ideology that killed Pehlu Khan. That same hate ideology that has divided India on religious and sectarian lines.
So you're saying hate killed Harsha? You're saying hate killed Harsha?
All those organizations.
Are you admitting hate killed Harsha?
If it is so, yes. If the investigation...
If it is Pehlu Khan's case and Tabriz's case, did they wait for the investigation to end before declaring it a hate crime, Anand Ranganathan?
No, Navika, I have really now caught the rat's tail, probably, metaphorically speaking. Now, Kamruzaman, please don't interrupt. I didn't interrupt. Please. Thank you so much. Navika, I am going to take 15 seconds. I want to quote someone. And then I will ask one of your panelists who is representing AIMIM, who said this. And I'm quoting this. Quote, वो जालिम, वो कुत्ता जो उत्तर प्रदेश में बैठकर अल्लाह की शान में गुस्ताखी किया, याद रख, तू आज जेल में है, मगर दुनिया तेरे लिए चूहे के बिल की तरह बन जाएगी इंशाअल्लाह. तेरी गुस्ताखी ने तेरी अपनी बर्बादी को दावत दी है. He said this about Kamlesh Tiwari. And a few weeks later, Kamlesh Tiwari was beheaded. Now I ask again, not just one Congress panelist, but the AIMIM panelist.
Which hateful ideology killed Kamlesh Tiwari?
Sai